Hello, this is Michael McCarthy, and in this video we're going to take a look at setting up a quick setup with Phoenix FD. Phoenix FD components are located in a couple of different places in the 3ds Max interface. One is under Create Geometry, and then from the drop-down Phoenix FD, you'll find your simulator. The next is under Create Helpers, and under Phoenix FD, you'll find your source and a turbulence node. We're going to go and just create a quick simulator and drag it out in the perspective view. So just click and drag, and this is going to drag out the box of the volume that you want to simulate. This is the area where any flames and fire and smoke will be made. Now the other thing we want to do is create something to be burning. So we're going to go to Standard Primitives and create a sphere. I'll drag that out inside the simulator, and we'll just move that up so that it's well within the boundaries of the simulation box. The next thing we want to do is associate this object with the simulation in some way, and to do that we're going to go to Create Helpers and drag out a source node. So we'll drag this out, looks like a little oil barrel, and we can go to the Modify panel. We'll scroll down and just click on Add at the bottom, and we'll pick our sphere. So now the sphere is associated with our Phoenix simulation, and it's going to burn inside of this volume. These three basic items are all we really need to set up a simulation using Phoenix and 3ds Max. So now, to create that simulation, we'll select our simulator, and we'll go into the Modify panel in the Simulation Rollout, and scroll down to the bottom, and you can see there's a Start button. This is for starting your simulation. So we'll go through and press Start, and you can see the fire getting emitted from the object inside the volume. You can see that while this is doing its simulation, you can kind of rotate around, and if you wish you can render things out, and we're looking pretty good there. You can also adjust any of the parameters as far as dynamics while this is simulating so that you can get a better idea of how this would work. So let's just click on Stop to stop our simulation, and take a look at this grid right here. When we zoom into the simulator, you can see that there are little hash marks on our grid, and this tells us the size of the grid and the size of the simulation volume. This is going to be important. If you dragged out a grid that was a little bit larger, then the simulation may happen a little bit slower, and if you made it a little smaller, then maybe it will happen a little faster. This is all based on the cell size. To adjust that cell size as well as the volume, you can go into the grid rollout, and you can see you have the X, Y, and Z size of the grid, and this is a really good thing to adjust. We're pretty good right here, but you want to try and get it as small as you possibly can so that it still encompasses whatever you want to be burning, but is small enough that we're reducing the simulation time, because the smaller the grid, the faster the simulation will happen. Also, the grid size, or cell size, is going to make a big difference, and you can adjust this manually, and there's also just a quick button down at the bottom to increase or decrease resolution. I'll click on decrease resolution once or twice. You can see the difference between the older simulator and the one we've updated is quite great. It's probably almost twice as big as what we had before, and this is going to allow us to simulate a lot quicker. This is really good for doing previews or when you're getting started so that you can have an iterative process of adjusting things really fast. So let's try this again with the larger grid size and smaller volume size, and click on Start. And you can see while we don't have as much detail, the simulation is happening really pretty fast, and we'll burn through about 100 frames pretty quickly. And once it's done simulating, then we can play back in real time. So I'm going to play this back, and you can see it plays back really very fast. This is a really fast simulation, and we may want to adjust that. To adjust it, we're going to scroll down to the Dynamics rollout right under Grid, and the second parameter down is Timescale. And this is how you can adjust basically how fast or slow things will happen on a really global level. So we'll set this to maybe 0.5 and make it about half the speed. This is doing the timescale for the actual simulation. So we're not really retiming the cache, which is something we can also do. We're going to have to resimulate this again in order to see this effect. Before I resimulate it again, I think I will adjust some things on my cell size. I could probably do with a increased resolution a little bit, and I can see that it's reaching the top. If we go to a different portion here and we render this out, we'll see that the smoke is reaching the top and we're getting clipped here. So while I decreased the size in X and Y, possibly in Z I may want to increase it so that I get some more information, and maybe I can have that smoke dissipate a little bit better. So I'm going to do that and start my simulation again. So now I can see the fire building and the smoke dissipating here at the top. And it goes through, and I have some pretty good speeds. I can kind of look at it from all angles. And now when we play it back with that different time scale, we get a better time. Maybe we could reduce it a little bit more, but I think we get the idea of adjusting that type of thing. We'll also go down over here and we'll see how our smoke is adjusting and if it's getting clipped off at the top. And it looks pretty good for right now. There's also some things we can do with the grid to make an adaptive grid, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later. The next thing that I wanted to show is just the basics of getting something to interact with our flames in the volume. So to do that, it's really pretty simple. Let's go and create an object, maybe just a tube. We'll just drag that out. So let's just rotate that into place and move it in the volume so it interacts with our flames. And Phoenix works in a method where instead of an inclusion list, there's basically an exclusion list. So anything that's inside the volume, it'll automatically work with. So in order to do that, of course, we're going to need to resimulate, and I'll just click on Start. And you can see as the flames start to come around this object, they kind of billow around it and they interact and collide with it. And I can even move this as we're simulating to get some different ideas of how that would work. And we'll start our simulation again. So if we wanted the flames to kind of go inside here, we could. And I'll just move this in there so that the flames will kind of go in and puff out like a chimney. And I was kind of moving this while it was simulating. So for our final simulation, we'll just decrease the simulation or the grid size. So now we're getting a little bit more detail as far as the increased resolution, and we can see the flames interacting with the object. And if we go in here, we should see them kind of spouting out on the inside here and coming out through the hole. And now we have our object interacting with the flames, and we can render this out to kind of see how that would look, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to stop this simulation now. And that's the basics about getting started with Phoenix, getting some objects lit on fire and adjusting a few of the parameters just to kind of get you started.